Hey, Dane Cash here with just a quick message to say that if you like this podcast, or really any of our podcasts, you should become an Escape Collective member. Head on over to escapecollective.com/member and sign up. Sign up so that we keep making these podcasts. And sign up if you like exclusives. If you're into the racing stuff, we're on the ground at the Classics, at the Tour de France. Lots of exclusive stories there. We've also got things like Geek Warning. We're breaking the stories on the tech side. Ronan's got the performance process. There's all sorts of things that you're getting access to by becoming a member. And it's pretty easy to do. Again, just head over to escapecollective.com/member. Sign up, support everything we're doing here at Escape Collective.
Hello and welcome to the World Talk podcast. My name's Gracie Elvin. I'm filling in for your regular host, Abby Mickey. We did promise you the draft this week, but we're going to have to push it out another week. But I think we're just building anticipation on that. It's always pretty funny to talk about, and I can't wait. We've even got a non-ex-pro coming in who's probably going to pants us all, which is going to be pretty fun. But today we'll be talking about some of the racing that's been and some of the racing that's coming up. And we're in that really exciting part of the season. So we've got a lot to talk about today. But first, introducing my co-host, the very wonderful Lauren Rowney.
Oh, I love that. You absolutely nailed the introduction, Gracie. 10 out of 10.
Thank you. And we are also joined by our now new fan favorite, Georgie Howe.
You're making me blush, and I have to put off my wonderful spreadsheet that I made for the draft for one more week so I can dive into the data a little bit more, 7 more days.
It's actually good because I haven't done any prep for it. I was just going to wing it, which was not going to go well. So now I have no excuse.
Did you do prep last time, Gracie?
No.
Neither. But I winged it and actually it sort of worked out. And last night I was going to do some prep with my husband, but he's like, no, we're not doing this. It's Sunday night and we need to just chill and enjoy each other's company. And for once, I don't want to talk about cycling. And I was like, I respect that. I will wing it.
No, that's a perfect Sunday night activity.
But yeah, excited to be here. I
need to get my partner Kimbers onto it, actually. She's like made for the draft. Maybe I'll just use her as my secret weapon.
Yeah, I feel like she'd have some good insight, actually.
Then your name needs to be like Gracie/Kimbers, just so we're all very clear. Or
yeah, I need to disclose.
She can be a team sponsor.
Team
sponsor in your cycling team name.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a good point. Got to come up with something creative.
I've made my name. I've done everything. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, the names are the best part. I love that. I'm excited. All right, well, we're getting you guys excited for that hopefully next week. But first, we're going to jump into another stage race that we had over the weekend down in Spain. It's in the area where a lot of teams do training camps in Valencia. So this race is at Marlen Valenciana. It was 4 stages. Pretty hilly. Like, I wouldn't say there was any flat stages, but we certainly got a few good bunch sprints out of it. Some great talking points, but let's just go stage by stage and then we can go for a bit of a deeper dive at the end, because I think that, there's a few things we're keen to talk about. But stage 1, I think it must have been the hilliest stage of the race because it really blew up in the second half of the race. And that was where we pretty much saw GC get thrown up, unfortunately, but it was certainly an interesting dynamic out there. So we had Vollering taking the stage to Reusser and back again Anna van der Breggen. So it's her first race back, first time getting eyes on her again. Not so weird to see her in an SD Works jersey because we were so used to that, but it was strange to see her racing at all. So we can definitely have a bit of a chat about that. But it was Vollering that showed us that she's not here to mess around this season. She broke away with 18K to go and soloed then to the finish. But let's have a bit of a chat about how that happened a little bit and what that funny dynamic between her and Anna was for a few kilometres there.
Oh, I did laugh.
And let's not forget that it was great to see Reusser back, because after such a rough 2024, going back to the draft, she was one of my big picks that I was hoping would bring in the points. And she had a really, really rough year. So for her to take leadership, because Lippert was there as well, that was really great to see. And I think offline, Gracie made a point as well that what we're starting to see already now, we've had a bunch of races, is kind of giving us that little indication for what's to come this year.
Yeah, I think we definitely got a glimpse of that on all of these stages of, people aren't showing that they're just in training mode anymore. They're showing us that they're sharpening their swords coming into the classic season, regardless of whether they're going for those cobbled classics or the Ardennes. They need to be looking pretty good now. And Reusser was definitely looking like she's coming back to her best again. And also in her interviews, she just seemed light and happy and, excited as well. And I think we missed that sometimes from some of her interviews the last couple of years. She looked like she had a lot of pressure on herself and fatigue and just not enjoying it as much.
Yeah, I think the culture maybe at Movistar has shifted a bit, because we're seeing Lippert as well really coming to her own. Like, from what we've seen so far this season, she seems to be almost like Alex Manley-esque in the rider she is. So, like, the sprints at the end of like a attritional day in the hills, not so much mountains, but definitely hills. So she's backing herself in those sprints. The team is backing her. We're seeing with Reusser, they're backing her with leadership. And it was really good to see her kind of take the bull by the horns, so to speak, in that stage and go after it. And run into her old DS in the road there. I don't think that happens very often.
Yeah, for three riders who were head and shoulders above everyone else, who used to all wear the same jersey. Well, Anna, slightly a different story, but she did wear that jersey for a long time. It was strange to see that all three wearing different jerseys. And we were having a bit of a joke on the chat as well when we were watching the replays of the dynamic between Vollering and Anna. Was like, it was almost like they used to date, and they just had this weird vibe of like, oh, hi. Yeah. Like, they weren't even talking to each other. They were just like sussing each other out.
You've seen your ex at a party and you like don't want to acknowledge they're there.
Yeah, it was just kind of funny. And I'm sure like we're building up the story more than it is, but I don't know. I think you could cut the air with a knife from what we could see on the vision. And then when Vollering rode Anna off the wheel, which she pretty much did, it wasn't really an attack. She was just stronger. And Anna, she looks not like she's got the final touches yet on her form. So obviously having a couple of years off is going to make a difference, even though she trained a lot. But I know that she would have some big goals this year, even if she hasn't voiced them specifically. So I don't think anyone expected a lot from Anna from this race, but it also was not a surprise to see her being able to go with the best rider currently. But yeah, she just didn't quite have that bit of extra in the tank like Demi did. So yeah, Demi getting away on her own, showing us that she's pretty much stronger than everyone. But then Reusser, who hadn't quite made that move of two, rode herself back up to Anna. And then Georgie, you had another funny joke about that when I said it looks like Royce is just the best mate that doesn't want to pick a side.
Yeah, and then I was like, well, she's Switzerland,
That was very good. Very, very good. Yeah, one word. That's all you needed.
Sometimes I only just need one word, and sometimes I say too many. But no, I think it was awesome to see. Like, it's not like Demi hasn't had the support in races previously, but today that first stage was like an overt display of team cohesion and commitment, like with the way that they pinned it up both those climbs. And then the last climb, she had four riders in front of her just going hell for leather. You could see on their faces, I think it was Shabby, like you could just see that her face was just like she was in a lot of pain. But then it really set Demi up to be able to go. And speaking to riders within the peloton on Anna, they all are terrified for the season ahead, because they said she's on ripper form. There was word that she crashed 3 days before the start of that race. So having that load in her already, and then to perform as she did, I think we can expect some really big things from her this season.
And I think this is, it would have been in the group chat or maybe a discussion we've had before. and even on the Discord, is like, Anna is the sort of athlete who is not going to make a comeback like this if she doesn't have really big goals. And I still think that the Tour de France Femme is one of those things. I could imagine if I was a rider of her ability and the sort of history she's had in the sport, it's like a box. We were just talking about ticking boxes when we were chatting offline. And I really feel if it's not this year, it's definitely next year. But everything that we're learning about the Tour de France Femme this year screams Anna. And I think we're going to see some epic battles there. There's going to be a few riders who could be contestants for the win. And obviously that's, months and months away, but you can't help but think if Anna is in this form now and hasn't raced, and I think that's the key here, as hard as you train, you just cannot simulate what it's like in a race effort to get that sort of pop. And the thing is the sort of power that Demi can ride at, I think, the sort of Anna, the style that she used to race, I think someone was saying that, Anna doesn't typically have that pop. But I remember distinctly that Anna was that sort of rider who would put people on their limits and then just lift again. So she definitely has that in her. And I'm curious to see her full race program, because I think it's all those race days are just going to lead up to the big one of the year. But the most interesting thing for me is, like, living in Belgium, I see a lot of Dutch and Belgian news, a bit more even than what's maybe coming through your channels about Kopecky and her ambitions. And, there's just so much talk about the Tour de France Femme, and that's a really big goal for her. And she's been very clear that she doesn't see there being a divide within the team between her and Anna, with ambitions for that. But you can't really, in my opinion, go to a tour, and I don't want to go into this too much, with two leaders, because it's not going to work out. It will not work out. It will end badly.
No, I think it's they're going to have to pick a side, so to speak, and it's going to be a tough cultural problem for the DSs. And previously, I don't think SD Works has been the best team to manage those kind of dynamics. So I'm intrigued to see how that goes this season. It would be a shame if that tarnishes the results that they could get, because those two working together could be quite the duo.
Formidable.
Definitely, Grand Tour winning duo.
And that decision doesn't have to be made in the race meetings before the Tour de France Femme. It has to be made now, because you don't want those riders racing each other in the season leading up to that race to prove that they're the ones that, or the one that should be raced for. Like, when you've got riders that are capable of so much, that have won so much, they don't need to prove anything really anymore. That's when those decisions need to be early in the season, to be like, this is the team plan, and it needs to come from the head director, to be like, unless someone really gets hurt or sick or there's something unforeseen, this is going to be our A plan for the season, or at least till August, and then we can reassess those last races. But like, that time goes so quickly, the classics goes quickly, they're already big profile races themselves. You don't want a team scrambling with individuals trying to prove that they should be number one for the biggest race of the year.
It's I mean, if I was them, with Anna being first year back, and also I don't know Anna, you guys know her better than I do, but she seems more or less quite mature, like ambitious for sure, but quite mature. If I was her, I'd be saying I'll go for stage wins, but we'll get Lotta up for the GC, because she can then protect Lotta in those big mountain days. That's the plan that I would have, and I think that's a logical plan, but whether or not that's indeed what they're thinking is another story.
And with SD Works and Logic, it's sometimes we wonder what their real plans really are.
I mean, it's entertaining. It's good for the popcorn element. I mean, sport is entertainment at the end of the day. So thank you, SD Works, for all the entertainment you've given us. But let's hope that they pull their shit together for this season and we can actually see some cohesion.
Well, speaking of SD Works, they got another win on stage 2. It was they had a couple of major climbs in the middle of the stage. The bunch did kind of blow to pieces, but it did all come back together. and it was Bredewald that took a very messy bunch sprint. I don't think anyone was super organized in the end. I think there was Trek, Movistar, I think UAE, and maybe Jayco kind of. There was a little bit of organization, but not quite. You could tell that they were still getting their training wheels off for bunch sprints, and Bredewald was the one that stole the show, much to the frustration of Balsamo. So another rider that goes under the radar a lot, even though she's won a couple of big bike races now. She's still like the one that we don't talk about that much from SD Works, but I think she's showing that, hey, I'm putting my hand up too, again, being on this team. So I'm interested to see how they use her more and more. She's definitely a great all-rounder as well, someone that can do a lot. And then to be beating the likes of Balsamo and Lippert and a bunch of other good sprinters from a bunch sprint after a hilly day, I think shows that she's come to this season having done some really good work in the off season.
Definitely. And I think a good talking point as well is Balsamo. So Balsamo came from the UAE tour, as we mentioned on the podcast last week. Not the best result for Little Trek. However, stage one, we should talk about the fact she got fourth after that hard day. Of course, there was quite a group behind, but still, she's showing really good form. She's climbing well, clearly. We know that she can climb well, but clearly Balsamo has really good form right now. And I think that's really good for Little Trek moving into the classics in a couple of weeks, because what we spoke about last week is that dynamic of that team has changed a lot. And I think the team we saw at UAE is more of the classics team that we're going to be seeing. So I was really happy to see her get up there. Second is, first loser isn't always the best, particularly when you look at the field here, it was lacking those really top sprinters that she was going up against at the UAE. So I thought that was a good start to the tour for her, a fourth and then now a second. Really happy to see Misha get up there for the win because, like you said, Gracie, she's a rider you've spoken about, I think, for seasons now as someone who has the potential to achieve really big things. And I think maybe if she spends another year or two in SD Works and then moves on to another team, that could almost be the best sort of thing for her trajectory as a rider.
I could see her maybe going to somewhere like Visma and being the protege of Voss if Voss continues to race for a little bit longer. She reminds me of Voss in a lot of ways, someone that can do it all, not the big mountains, but pretty much everything else, and maybe won't get that many leadership opportunities in SD Works.
She always finds a finish line. Like racing with Misha, she's pretty brutal in the bunch and unforgiving in the competitive nature of the sport. However, she has been a pretty good team player, like we saw her last year on SD Works with Demi in that awful crash stage. She was the one that checked in on her and was able to provide that support on and off the bike. So I think she's a good teammate in that respect. But on Balsamo, I just had a quick glance at, we'll talk about the start list for Omloop Het Niewsblad later, but she's on there with Norsgaard. So what do you guys think? Like, is Balsamo showing enough form here? She's sprinting well after big climbs. Like, is opening weekend a target, do you think?
Maybe not a target, but a stepping stone that she would, love to win on the path to some of those other bigger classics.
Yeah, like San Remo, as an Italian, San Remo would be on her cards for sure.
Yeah, and going back to Gracie's point about like having form, like if you don't have the form now, if you're not showing something now, it's not like in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, all of a sudden you're going to be in that front group. It's just not how it works. So if you're struggling at this point and you have ambitions for the first part of the classic season, I don't think you're probably going to hit the mark. But then we'll have to get into the conversation about the other GC riders actually that were at this tour, because everyone's prep is different. And, if you're not planning on being at 90-something%, like 97% at this tour, then that's fine. Like if it's really just that you want to be fantastic in July, I can understand that all of this is kind of leading up maybe to the end of the classic season where you start seeing the likes of Nieuwe going for a second win at Flèche Wallonne and maybe trying to add a Liège-Bastogne-Liège to the Palmares. But yeah, I think that's a good point, Georgie. And when we get into what the start list is starting to look like for Omloop Het Niewsblad, if SD Works is building a team around Lorena, then we're going to see more of like the lead out riders that can climb sort of well, support her to make sure that it comes. It's unpredictable, that race, but if there are enough teams that have the ambitions of, we think we've got a Balsamo that can sprint from a group of 20 or something after a hard day, then that's maybe the sort of outcome that we'll see if there are enough teams invested in that result.
I mean, it's going to be exciting. Belgian Christmas begins.
Yeah, we'll get to that, but let's keep chatting about this Valenciana race because, like I said, there is a lot to talk about. I think it wasn't the most exciting stage race ever, but there's so much that has come out of it. And you mentioned Nieuwe I think she attacked actually into that last sprint on stage 2, so she's definitely stretching the legs a little bit. And it was Lippert that kind of tried to bridge that gap, and Lippert is looking great. She not only bridged that gap, but she held on to third, and then she also was on the podium on the final stage as well. So I love that she's putting her hand up for the sprints, and it's not necessarily something we've seen a lot from her in the past. She did win a stage of the Tour de France Femmes in an uphill dragging sprint, and I think that was a real key moment for her 2 years ago, a year and a half ago maybe, to have that confidence in herself that she can be a finisher, not just a climber. So yeah, I think this tour was really her battleground, I guess, for honing some of those skills going into the season. And I think she's one that I'm going to be watching a lot in the classics. And another rider that we haven't mentioned who was very noticed on the stage was Brodie Chapman. She was away with Eva van Aert quite early on from the first intermediate sprint. They got to the first major climb of the day, and Brodie pretty much just rode her off the wheel and stayed away until about 4K to go. So she was away for ages on her own. It did work out for her, but she looked great. Like, she looked really good out there. The bunch obviously were happy to control it. I think they had it under control, but I'm sure she would have enjoyed herself, and probably a few extra watts in the tank going into the season. So, yeah, she's got such a distinctive style. She kind of bobs up and down on the bike, and I'm like, I hope she's not losing watts doing that. But, like, apart from that, she looks like she's, put herself in good form for this season as well. And we saw her a bit over the summer of racing here in Australia, but I think, this is starting to get to serious crunch time now in Europe. And I think that even though she didn't get a result, I think that was a good day out for her.
I think
100%.
Chapman is like a rider who has the potential to pull off a Grace Brown move or a Marlen Reusser move.
Okay.
She's got the tenacity to do that as well.
And she has fun with it too. I sent her a message after this stage, and she was like, that was so much fun. Like, even though she got caught 3.2 Ks to go, she's like, I had a blast out there. So I think like that's if she's that kind of rider, I think she's probably, like, she also climbs probably a bit better than Grace, I would say. She's probably more mountain, like, if I'm thinking Brodie on a long mountain day breakaway. That's a terrifying prospect because she can also descend well. It's she's got that. She's got a pretty multifaceted toolkit there. And yeah, for her to only get caught 3.2 Ks to go or whatever it was, and she was still pushing the pedals all the way to the end. And then as soon as she got caught, it was clear UAE wanted to make it hard, because then they had another rider go straight over the top of her.
Yeah, that team also looks like they've got good morale, and they're bouncing off each other quite well. So I think they've had a bit of a split roster so far. Some riders have come in and out of the racing, but I think from what we've seen there, and we talked about it last week, they could be definitely one of the big super teams for the season. So Brodie decided to step away from some of the races over the summer and sharpen her sword in her own way, and she's come back into racing, like, looking really good and really slipping into that team really well. So yeah, definitely watch that space there. But heading into stage 3, it was similar again. The terrain's just up and down in this tour, quite narrow roads as well, so sometimes hard to move up, but not windy like the classics, so people aren't too hectic or scrambling. Again, this stage was a bunch sprint, even though it blew apart a few times. There was a breakaway of about 3 riders in the final that had gotten away on the descent, but they were caught within the last couple of K. It was Trek that were chasing hard. They had Anna Henderson, which I think that they're loving having in that team, to have that horsepower for riding moves like that back. And Spratt as well, putting a lot of effort on the front there, putting all of their eggs into the Balsamo basket, and Balsamo was able to pull it off. So she got the win on stage 3 ahead of Gaskin and Skalnak Soika. So I think that was an interesting podium as well. And Georgie, I think you might have a bit of intel just from your time racing with Ingrid Gaskin. Do you think that was an interesting result for her for this season?
No, Ingvild is, I call her a sprint dog. Her boyfriend Sev doesn't like it that I call her sprint dog, but she likes the term sprint dog. So I think we saw her really showing her form last year in the Ardennes. So she had some really good results there. I can't remember which race it was that was shortened, but then she turned out a podium result there. But she that was kind of the first run of her form in the sprints. Like she had some good results at the Vuelta as well in the sprint stages. So started to really market herself as that attritional sprinter. So I wasn't surprised to see her here. I think we hadn't seen her in the stages prior purely out of just positioning and team support. So NOX hadn't finessed their lead out train for her in that sense. But I watched the sprint. She was right on Balsamo's wheel. So she was in prime posse to go. So when Balsamo was go, she just went with her and couldn't quite come around her, but she certainly has a kick on her. So I think that's one to watch in the races to come.
Yeah, definitely. You're right, Georgie. She got 3rd in Amstel Gold, which that race was shortened, but still not an easy race. So
so that was quite a notable result for her, and she lacks confidence sometimes. So that result really kind of bolstered her to have that bit of swagger that we talked about last week in her ability to get up in the sprints. I think she's been told at NOX that will be her role, and they've given her rope to really embrace that. So I'm keen to see what happens.
That's good, and it's probably opportunities that she wasn't really going to get at Jayco. Just because
with the likes of Letty, we've got Letty there. We had Georgia. We had Manley at the time. Like it's tough, and Ruby. So like hard to kind of pick around those sprinters who you go for on the day. But also Ingvild, she can climb quite well as well. We were racing for her at the Vuelta in those, even though it was like quite mountainous. So she's one to watch. Actually, no, don't put her in your draft because I'll have her in my draft.
Don't give too much away, Georgie, because you never know who gets what pick when.
I need to start talking down my riders.
Yeah, I'm not asking you these questions on the podcast to make it an interesting podcast. I'm just trying to get as much out of you as I can.
Gracie's got Kimbers in the background taking notes.
Oh, God.
Going straight into the spreadsheet. But also a fantastic result from the Canyon SRAM Zonda crypto rider, Agnieszka Skalniak. It was just so fun. I love seeing the rider reactions from teammates. And, she's a Polish rider, and Cassini Odoma was clearly very, very stoked about this. So I thought that was a really good result for her. She came from the development team, I believe. She's had some good results. Like she took the GC a few years ago now, 3 years at the Lotto Belgium Tour. So a rider with a lot of potential, and to come to a race like this with such a good field. And we should mention that this tour over the years, it's been argued that it's the quality of the field is like a world tour level, which I mean is making it a bit harder for the smaller teams that do get a start there. But like the quality of the field at Valencia is what you're going to see basically in the upcoming classics. So good result for Canyon.
Yeah, the start list was amazing. I think talking to riders, whilst the start list was World Tour tier, the course wasn't necessarily didn't necessarily live up to the company it was entertaining. So hopefully we see maybe the organisers reassess that in the future.
Yeah, no, it's well run. There was a few moments where I'm like yelling at the cameraman, being like, "What are you doing?" And then I had to remind myself that, wow, we didn't even have this level like when Lauren and I were racing. This is actually amazing. We're just used to like really good coverage now, and we're used to like not shaky cameras. We're used to helicopter shots. We're used to having good finish line shots. Even just like the camera at the end on that stage, they were just filming the Canyon team, and I was like, they're not filming Trek, they're not filming Balsamo. What are they doing? But I was just like, oh, wait a minute, they're actually doing a great job. Like, I'm actually really glad that we can even watch this race.
I'm not sure if the resources was like, it's because, they did a great job for the resources they had. Talking to another rider, she was like, the motos were so close to the riders because the camera they were using was so small. Like, so they needed to get really close. But the motorbikes did help out some of the aspects of the racing. So I think there was one shot during the tunnel with Marlen and Anna, and the moto was right up in front of them. But they think we see that across cycling, so it's not a new issue.
Yeah. Oh, well, overall, it's great. And to wrap it up, stage 4, again, pretty hilly. I think I can't remember what the profiles were in terms of climbing numbers, but I think this was one of the less climby days, but still some pretty decent hills in there to contend with. Just as we got the main coverage, we saw a classic Sprat attack of a reduced group. She attacked from the back, from the side, and within not that many kilometers, she'd brought a group with her, and there was about 9 riders in the breakaway. And I'd say that this was the biggest breakaway of the whole tour, and some really good riders in there too, notably Sprat, Broderwold, Boisman, Alerud. There was definitely some quality in there. They were all working well together. I think at one stage they were up to just over 2.5 minutes. So it was actually looking like the bunch was happy to let this group take the stage, as there weren't really any GC threats in there. So I was looking forward to seeing how they would have played that out. But from behind, there was a couple of teams that didn't have any representation in the break. They wanted to see another sprint, or maybe a more of an aggressive reshuffling of the deck in the final. It was mostly Visma that was chasing. They had a bit of help from Jayco, a little bit of help from a couple of other teams, but they ended up bringing it back pretty close to the finish. So it was another group sprint. Balsamo taking her second stage, Skalnat Soika taking second. I think she would have been pleased to go one step better from the day before, and Lippert again in third. So I think definitely some positive points there from lots of teams. A nice way to set up the rest of the season. And as I said at the start, the overall GC was pretty much set on stage 1. So Vollering took out the overall GC to Reusser and Anna van der Breggen. So I think we have pretty much done most of the deep dive. Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about? I think we did cover Balsamo and Trek retuning themselves from UAE and bouncing back really well to get 2 stage wins. I think they'd be really pleased with that turnaround. Vollering obviously showing that she's the best. She's the one to beat this season. Anything more to say on Anna?
No, I think we covered it all.
Yeah. I think it's like watch the space.
I just want to say it was just weird. I think I said it already, but it was just kind of strange. Like, we haven't seen that many riders over the years come back from a retirement. I think the one that jumps to mind is Ruth Edwards. And it was not strange to see her back in the bunch after a couple of years, because she really stepped right away from road cycling. She stayed really fit and involved in cycling, but she did gravel and did fun stuff, and then she came back. So it's like she had a proper break. But seeing Anna, maybe because of all of the drama that happened last year at SD Works, most of it was gossip, of course, but it certainly created this big narrative around that team about who did what, who shouldn't have done this or that, or I don't know, some of those more delicate relationship ins and outs. It was strange to see her back in a jersey, also because she'd been in a director's seat and we're wearing a coach's hat as well, of of Demi as well as some other riders. So I feel like, yeah, with that whole combination of factors, it was just odd to see her back in the race. It was almost like she was an outsider. I don't know what you guys thought about that.
It felt like she'd really transitioned away. I mean, okay, she was still in the sport, but I don't know if I read an interview or it's just in my head that I felt like she'd gone and said, I've achieved everything I want to achieve. I've been world champion. I've won the Olympics. I've been multiple world champion. I've won every big race that there is to win. And what is left? That's kind of how I felt, that she retired on her own terms. Still relatively young, I would say now, because we're seeing athletes go closer towards 40 and stay in the sport and still do well. But I just really felt like she was done. And I think we gotten used to seeing her as Anna van der Breggen, the DS who sometimes you see on the bike having a bit of fun or racing gravel. But I must admit, when it must have been early last year, probably this point, she went and did that gravel race and beat the girls on her team. Do you remember that? And everyone was kind of like, oh, wow, Anna must be pretty fit, because the athletes that went there to race with her weren't Hubbards. Like they, were in the middle of, well, they're at the start of the season, so they were fit. So for me, I think that's why it feels odd, is just, I thought she really closed the chapter, whereas like Lotte Hentala, she had some mental health issues. So she went away, she had a kid, she came back. Ruth Edwards' burnout came back. So it really felt like Anna's book was closed.
Yeah. I think I think I said it in the chat, like, I mean, all the more power to Anna in the way that she has taken control of her narrative and coming back into the sport. Like, she certainly has unfinished business. More or less, I'd have to say it's to do with the Tour de France femme, but it does feel like she's trying to have her cake and eat it too, in a way. So yeah, it does. I think weird is probably a good summation of how it feels, Gracie. I think it's a good word to use. But I guess we'll have to see how the dynamic plays out. I think it's, again, from an entertainment value perspective, it's intriguing to say the least. So I'm keen to see how the season plays out in that respect. But yeah, is it the right thing to do? I don't think there's right or wrong in this space.
No, definitely not. Definitely, like, yeah, all of us have a lot of respect for her. So I think it will just, be interesting to see how it plays out. And you want it to go well. Like you don't want it to be a disaster, because you have to put so much into being a top athlete. Like, I definitely don't want to come back, but I daydream about it sometimes, and sometimes I still dream about it. Like, I have quite vivid dreams about coming back. So obviously some unfinished business, like a lot of us have, but I'm not going to. And even if I did, like, just the thought of how much work it takes to get back to that level. And then, of course, the self-doubt of being like, can I even do it? Am I so far behind? Did I actually get to my peak? And now that everyone else is so much better, it's like, is it even worth it? Like, someone like Anna probably, I don't know if she'd ask herself that question, but I think she still would have pondered it. Like, the sport comes a long way, even every year. So it's like, credit to her that she's having another crack.
I have a question for you guys. Like, so we have Anna, and then we've got Pauline. I feel like there's different people have different perspectives over both these returns this year. Where do you think that stems from?
What do you mean, different perspectives?
Yeah.
So I feel like,
in what way?
I feel like with Anna, it's okay, she's coming back to road cycling. She was a champion on the road, very well accomplished, very well respected within the peloton. Pauline has been racing, but it's like she almost was done with the road. And she was quite happy with that. She's gone away and now she's done all she can off-road. And so she's like, I guess now the last thing left is to come back to the road. So it's almost like an afterthought in a way. I don't know. I just, like, on the through the media and through discussions with others, there are definitely two different camps. So there's like the perspective that people have on Anna's return and the perspective people have on Pauline's return. And there's certainly two different feelings towards them.
I understand that. I can understand that. I honestly don't have my own opinion about it, other than I think what you said is quite true, is Pauline, if you look back at her palmarès, she was a very, very successful young rider. When she did the triple in 1 year, Pauline must have only been 22 or something, 23.
Incredible.
It's very,
amazing.
Very, very young. To win 3 world championships in cyclocross, mountain bike, and the road is, who does that? A Vos. And she was honestly tipped back then to be basically a rider like Vos. And I think she got a lot of joy out of mountain biking, it seemed. And I think the technical aspect of it really challenged her, because if you watch XC, and Gracie can speak to this, Pauline isn't the most technical rider. She's just so bloody strong that a lot of the course designs suit her, where she can sort of power away and then hold it enough that in the technical sections, a rider like, say, Puck Peterson isn't going to come back as easily. But I do wonder with her, because Pauline must be around 33, 34 now. I don't know how much younger she is than me. And like you said, she's achieved everything she wanted to in mountain bike. Cyclocross, I think, is not that interesting either for her. So maybe, like Anna, she has unfinished business. And I think with these very, very talented individuals who I imagine are very ambitious, why wouldn't you look at the women's pro peloton and be excited about what you're seeing and thinking deep down, well, am I good enough to challenge? And whether she thinks that she can really win the Tour de France or even just take a stage or win a classic or something, I think if she did any of those things, it would be huge. I think she's got the engine for it. It's just going to be a question of, a mountain bike race is a very different race, and she's come out and said this, to racing a road race now. And the distances we were racing 10 years ago, the races now are longer and harder. Like, you're on the gas the whole time from what I've heard. There's no relief. So I think what she's experiencing now is like a little bit of a shock to the system. And you saw that at the Worlds last year, is like, holy moly, like, this is World Tour racing now. Like, wow, it's come leaps and bounds in 10 years. And I think she's such a competitive individual, she will rise to the occasion. It's just, where is she going to sit in the fold? Because we have so many good riders now.
I think that she physically, no question, she's probably got it. I think mentally, obviously she's tough, but the mentality of road cycling is so different to mountain biking. It's not a solo event. It's not, like, she's used to being on her own, I guess, from doing cross country for so long. And I think, from my own opinion, the different perspectives are that Anna's coming back as a winner, but also as a mentor. She can be in that position in the team that she'll ride for others. We've seen her do it lots in the past. She helped Demi to a lot of her earlier victories, and she's definitely going to help other riders to their victories this year, as well as probably taking some of her own. Whereas I think we're assuming that Pauline's going to be coming in just to win races. And I don't really think that she'll be a strong mentor in that team. I could be wrong. I'm sure she's got a lot of information to offer young riders, but it's probably not specific to road. So that's where I see their differences being in the way that they're going to approach the season, and their generosity in how they can give back to their team as well.
Both of you are so diplomatic. Good job.
Hey, we all balance each other out. I love the comments always about the different opinions. I think, I don't know, am I diplomatic in the way I speak on here?
No, but I think the responses that you both gave were right. Like, they're both very, very correct. And I think they really paid respect to the ability and the history of both riders, because we are standing on the shoulders of giants in every female women's sport, and they're part of that, as are you guys. So for them to come back into the fold, it's something that we haven't really seen in other sports. So like, when a champion does come back, like, it's almost like trying to think, like, not Billie Jean King, but like, maybe, can't remember other female tennis players from like the mid 2000s, but it'd be like them coming back into the
think of Lauren Jackson coming back.
Yeah, it's basketball. Great example. Yeah.
Great example, because the league, look at the league now. I mean, I think women's basketball and women's football in the US has been really leading the charge in a lot of areas. They've got so many incredible women advocating for their sports and their rights and everything, diversity and inclusion in the leagues. And that big push, I think, is just happening everywhere now. But Lauren Jackson is definitely someone who pops into my mind, because I remember following the news about her trajectory back to playing at the very top. I mean, she was a legend. She is a legend in Australian sport and also in the women's WNBA. So for her to come back and do that, I almost see it's not the same as Anna, because the age gap is quite substantial, I think. But it's like, one of those, Anna will be written, she is written into the history books of our sport, like Annemiek van Vleuten. There are those few riders like Serena and Venus, and you're always going to have those athletes. So I also think there's a bit of that, and I'm excited for it. I always had the utmost respect for her as an athlete and how she carried herself, and I thought she was a very gracious winner. And to Gracie's point, she was key in a lot of those early victories for Demi, and I still remember speaking fondly about how much Demi would be learning from an individual like Anna. And I'm sure quite a lot of what she learned has set Demi up for the sort of success we're seeing now, whether we like to think it or not. But no, this year is just getting started, but man.
Well, we've done a lot of future thinking, so why don't we just finish it off with a bit of a preview for opening weekend. So we've got a weekend off racing, and then we have opening weekend from the 1st and 2nd of March. And it kicks off with Omloop Het Niewsblad, which is actually only in its 3rd edition of being a World Tour race, even though it's been around for a long time.
Really?
Yeah, they didn't give it World Tour status for ages, even though it was on par with those top races. It's the kickoff, but it's like one of the hardest of the classics. It's they've changed the course a little bit over the years. It's pretty much the same as it has been for the last few years, starting in Ghent and finishing in Ninove, but it does cross some of the iconic climbs and cobbled sectors like the Molenberg, the Haaghoek, Lieberg, Berendries, and of course it finishes with the knockout combo of the Mur and the Bosberg. So that famous Chapel Mur is such a killer, awesome. And then they have the absolute knockout punch of the Bosberg, and that's about 12k to go. Yeah, so I love that combo, not so much when you're racing it, but it certainly makes for a really exciting finale. And always a will they, won't they situation of riders that have attacked on those last 2 climbs to see if they can hold out for those last 12k to the finish. Last year it was won by Marianne Vos, and I'm pretty sure my memory serves me correctly, that was the only time she's actually ever raced Het Niewsblad, and she won. She's not on the start list this year, so off mic, Georgie said she's been there, done that, tick that box, so we might never see her here again, much to the relief of some of the other riders. So she beat Lorena Wiebes last year on the line. So you've mentioned Wiebes will be lining up for this edition. She'll probably be the hot favourite for the race, but Balsamo is going to be there as well, and a handful, if not a couple of dozen, of really strong favourites for this race. And much like what we've been saying throughout this podcast, I think if you don't have it now, that you're going to be in trouble. So you could be hiding your cards or keeping them close to your chest, but opening weekend is when you have to lay them all out on the table. I haven't done a cross-reference of Het Niewsblad and the following day, which is the Hageland, Omloop Het Hageland. They're about the same distance. Niewsblad is 137.9k, Hageland's 135.6k. Hageland's the course is nowhere near as challenging, but if you've raced the day before, boy, it bloody hurts. But often they'll have a bunch of fresh riders coming in, and it's a good opportunity for Conti teams to come as well, because it's a 0.1 race, I believe. So that's a good shake-up, and they've got some extra prizes this year. They really want to support young riders, and there's also a cash prize for the most combative. So it's always such a combative race, but I think it probably is going to be even more so, particularly from those lower end teams. So yeah, I think it's safe to say we're all excited about the opening weekend of racing.
Yeah, I love the races in Belgium, just because like they've got these iconic climbs that you can like cross-reference across every single race. So like you get so familiar with them over the season, you're like, okay, this is probably what's going to happen on Molenberg. This is probably what's going to happen on the Haaghoek. Okay, Leiberg, Berendries, like that combo sucks, and this is probably what like how it's going to line out, because we all know the approaches to these climbs. It's just I don't think in any other sport you get this kind of religion around certain climbs. Like I'm sure people in Belgium, correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren, have their climb that they absolutely love and they will go to every year.
Oh yeah, like the super fans, they go to the same spot for sure. Yeah. And I think the thing about the classics is, out of all the races in the year, this is where the weather impacts the most. So depending what we're going to see this spring, we've had my first spring, it was like just god awful cold, so it was frost. So that experience is going to be something different if we get like a day with rain, how that impacts the climbs. And going back to your point, Georgie, about how exactly how to approach each part of the race. Well, that also differs depending on the weather conditions and race plans. 100%. And if there's wind, and it's just like everything is thrown at you. And so I think from spectators' point of view, that's kind of like the beauty of it, is just watching this all unfold. And it's always spectacular. Even when you got those crystal clear blue days on a Flanders, which I also love to watch that, because that's just a really nice experience as well for the riders. You don't want to see absolute chaos and people getting hurt, but that's part of the racing. I don't know. It's just, even though we've had all this racing, it still feels like racing kicks off on that day.
Definitely. I think I was chatting with Ushka Ziegard actually, and because she sent a video of like the Valenciana, and she's like, opening weekend isn't for another 3 weeks, but this is like, isn't this opening weekend? Like, I don't really understand. It feels like we've been opening the cycling season for
like 2 months.
Yeah, I know. But like, the three of us, we love the classics. I'd say this is the real opening weekend coming up. I'm just trying to get the weather up for Omloop. I know we're a few days away now, a few weeks away, but I'd be interested to see, because particularly like there are some really open sections there, but this is cycling Christmas, and I cannot wait to see the race hit Oudenarde and for the fireworks to go off.
And I think we all have like favorite riders as well, and there's always an element of patriotism in the people I get excited about seeing, whether I know them or not. But based off like Ruby Roseman-Gannon's end of her season, and just that, I keep thinking back to her ride at the World Championships, and I just would love to see her just be a force this spring classics. And I feel like this is a sort of race where Ruby has the potential to win a race like this. I think Persico, what we've seen in UAE, she's always been a rider as well with huge potential to win races like this. So there's a bunch of riders who we've already seen a little bit of a showing of what's to come. And Alex Manley, another rider I think who could be good in these races, but I have a feeling that we're going to see more from her maybe in the Ardennes.
Yeah, I think
I was thinking this probably, but I think this race could suit her really well. But I don't think she's quite hit her stride yet this year. But going back to the Liverlula Jayco squad, I feel like they're going to be
huge,
better than they have been this year.
Yeah.
Looking at their lineup for this race, it looks really nice. So I feel like they've just got a little bit more oomph again as a squad, and some nice results in the summer that have given them a bit of confidence. And who else? We don't have Voss here, so that Visma team is a bit more open. could be interesting to see how they play it. And yeah, just a handful of riders that could really mix it up. Puck Peters is going to be there for Phoenix Sekunic, and that squad has been exciting us for the past couple of seasons too. So we've been seeing their jerseys a little bit in some of the races now, but I feel like she'll be someone that's going to light up that race a little bit.
What do you guys think about the EF squad? I mean, you've got Nina Kessler, who I think this will be her 16th Omloop Het Niewsblad. So she knows this race like the back of her hand. But someone like Roy and Jackson, like those guys are classic specialists, and I'd love to see. I think Roy's really enjoying her time at EF so far, and she had a great Aussie summer, and she worked really well for the team. So I think that shows that she's on form, and knowing her, she'd be targeting the classics pretty hard. So I'd be keen to see how they go.
Definitely. I'm surprised to see Jackson on the stat list, though. Didn't she
Yeah, I
break
was
her
just going to
scaphoid?
say.
Yeah, she broke her scaphoid, right?
Yeah,
How long
yeah,
does
she
that take?
did.
I'm not a doctor, but
Takes a while.
Yeah, it's a
Like-
bad bone to break. It's just
Yeah.
an annoying area.
They've probably
So-
given it like a special little plastic cast or something.
Yeah.
Or they might just need to update the start list.
maybe it is Pro Cycling Stats. Can we mention that on this pod? But then the other team that has got a ripper lineup with Persico is UAE. So like that is going to be a team to watch in this race. Like you've got Backstead, who we already talked about, Eleanor Backstead being someone who showed great form at UAE, the UAE tour. She knows the classics like the back of her hand. I feel like every season she just gets better and better, and I feel like she's going to be off the leash at UAE a bit more. So she'll be allowed to get up the road maybe. You got Bertazzolo there for a sprint. But the combo of Persico and Swinkles could be quite dangerous heading into those climbs, and we know Persico can handle her bike.
Yeah, just to round it off, I would say third place from last year, 5 for Georgie. We haven't really seen much of her yet, so it'd be interesting to see how her and the team Picnic Post and L team goes. We don't have a full squad announced for SD Works either, so watch that space. And I had one more. Oh, yes, I mentioned Lippert earlier a lot. I think she's going to be definitely in that top handful of riders as well, probably going for a podium. So can she pull off a win? I think that would be a pretty nice one for her to collect.
Could you imagine that? Movistar wins Omloop Het Niewsblad.
Annemiek was with Movistar the year she won it, right?
Oh,
Against
that's right, she
Demi.
was. I keep forgetting that.
Yeah, that was
wow,
great.
okay.
That two up where Demi sat on for, I don't know, 12 kilometers or more, no, more, 20. And then they were both so cooked that she couldn't sprint, and Annemiek just dieseled away. No, it's going to be a great weekend. We've got just 2 weeks to go, less than 2 weeks to go. I'm hoping to get out to the race. It's been a while since I went actually out to that race, so that should be a bit of fun.
I just had a look at the preliminary weather. It's looking like a bluebird day, Lauren.
It is blue skies and sunshine and about 2 degrees here, so it's cold.
Look, the top temperature is 6.6 degrees. So,
warm.
Toasty.
Everyone's asking in the bus, what are you wearing today? Actually,
Oh my God.
The Newsblad sign-on is always one of the best of the year as well. They use one of the velodromes in Ghent, and it's like
Kupka.
Dark.
Yeah, it's like a rock star.
They put lights on, and it's like you feel like a rock star. It's actually super fun, even though you're like shitting your pants because you're so nervous.
I think like the Omloop was always the race where like the scissors came out. I don't know if I can say this, but I will. The scissors came out, and we would just like make adjustments to our kit because like just like making creative things, like making our own knee warmers and cutting holes in our arm warmers, so that way easier to kind of peel off. When the racing got on and we got too hot, because you're so cold when you start, but you know that like once you hit Adenauer, like you're on and you don't have any time to take anything off after that.
I stupidly, I don't know if it was the first time I raced it, I put leg warmers on because it was so cold, but I am a person who gets really hot in racing.
Yeah.
And then I had to take them off in the race because I
remember being super
I like
impressed
roll them down onto my calves, and then like that's just weird because then your calves start like hitting the, and then it becomes dangerous. So then I was like, that was the first time I had experienced taking leg warmers off in the middle of a race, and arguably like one of the most hectic, crazy.
Yeah.
No, it was.
I'm just imagining like the people like behind you on your left and your right looking at you, being like what,
stupid Australian.
What is she doing? Jess
This
Allen, I
isn't
think, told us-
triathlon.
yeah,
Sorry,
Jess
Scott.
Allen said I think it was her first classic season when she was a baby, racing opening weekend, and she said it was like the coldest winter Belgium's ever had, and she didn't want to take anything off in the race, so she just went in nothing.
Yeah.
So she was.
I remember that. That was 2013, and it was fucking cold. It was like, I think there was snow on the ground for
It
Het
was.
Niewsblad,
Yeah.
and we were in longs. Like most riders in the peloton were wearing long
Except
necks or
Lizzie.
leg warmers, except for Lizzie and Jess Allen, and her legs were so red because they were so cold. I rode up next to her in her Futuroscope kit, being like, "Mate, are you okay?"
Honestly, but she's like,
and
probably
because she
came
was
from
always
Perth
at the front, she was getting like more wind as well.
Yeah.
Oh, no. But like, I think it was my first time. I did the duo of Newsblad Hageland 2023, and it was just freezing cold the whole time. And Hageland doesn't have as many cobbles as Newsblad, but it was like ice on the ground, and our wheels just kept like skidding out as we're going around the corners because it's just like slick bitumen and hectic because you got smaller teams in there as well. So it's a very, very interesting weekend of racing. I think most teams are actually doing Newsblad, Hageland, and then Samin pretty soon afterwards as
Normally.
well.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's a lot of classics very early on.
Yep. Well, I'm excited. It's best time of the year. I'm always sad when it finishes, but we're at the start now, so I'm feeling good. I think that's a wrap, guys. I think we did pretty good today of talking about that racing and what's coming up. So what are you obsessed with?
I am obsessed with my son's new bike. He got it for Christmas, but because everyone was sick and going back to the cold weather was pretty horrendous, he didn't get to get out much. So he's really into it. It's his first pedal bike. It's a Woom. It is the most beautiful bike. It's got a special paint job on it. And he just loves it. He calls it his blue bike. So it's actually blue and purple. And he's just taken to it. It took him, I think, 2 times, and he learned how to pedal, and that's all because he started on a balance bike so young. And he loves his blue bike, and it's really fun to see him enjoying the pedal bike. So that's what we're obsessed with at the moment.
Not sponsored, but you should be. I am obsessed with TV show, and I'm sure you guys know it, Saturday Night Live. They've just had their 50-year anniversary show. I was pissing myself, honestly. Like, just so funny. Their
lineup was amazing, wasn't it?
Incredible. And they also had a concert. So like Cher performed. I sent you guys the clip of the Backstreet Boys. Like, I never knew I needed like adult AJ McLean in like a cargo vest with like a leopard print cowboy hat singing I Want It That Way to me. But I did need it, it turns out. So thank you, Backstreet Boys. That was fantastic.
I don't want to know what you do in your personal time.
Yes, you do. Meryl Streep was on there too. She gave Will Ferrell a middle finger on live TV. It was great. And then she also was in the skit with, I don't know if you guys watch SNL, but they do like a Close Encounters with Kate McKinnon. Like they used to do that skit where like she gets abducted by aliens and reporting it back to the FBI. It's hilarious. Meryl Streep made her first skit appearance and was just absurd. And like, you know, when like they're trying to like hold in the laughter, but like because they're doing like ad lib. So funny. But I think particularly like in this day and age, it's a satire show, and all the way through its inception, pretty much for the past 50 years, like it's seen some pretty fucked up shit in America and in the world, but it's always managed to bring it back and make people laugh and, like keep things light, but it also acts as like a checks and balance for the political situation. So they've brought on they do like impersonations of politicians to kind of do a commentary on their like the political situation. So like Alec Baldwin was Donald Trump in his first term as president. But I think we're at the point now where like the absurdity of modern politics has like caught up with satire. And that was not me. That was a quote from NPR that I just read. So I will cite my sources. But it's, I don't know where. I think SNL's done a really good job, but I think its role is going to be really important moving forward. And I think they've acknowledged that in this 50-year anniversary. So I just want to say I'm really appreciative of SNL and the laughter that they do bring, but also the important messages that they have in their show as well. And for Sabrina Carpenter and Paul Simon, who were on the show as the musical guests.
Oh.
Yeah, I need to go and watch that. I saw the lineup and I'm like, damn, that's going to be good. I listened to a podcast called Smartless that was recommended by Kimbers, and it's they you know, a lot of the time their friends come on and they talk about the time that they hosted SNL, and I just love those stories, and I love that process of where they got to, how they got to that point, because like to write some of those skits is so clever but so funny, and like to touch those cultural moments and the political stuff, and yeah, it's awesome. We need stuff like that to keep it light, but also to be part of the zeitgeist, and
like rebel,
not be
almost
so serious, but also like it's a way of being informed but making it funny. You reminded me, I read this post on Facebook because I also love this podcast called Chat 10 Looks 3. So I also recommend that one, which is hosted by Lee Sales and Annabelle Crabb, that are brilliant in their own right in Australia, do a lot of their own real life political commentary, but they have a funny side hustle, which is their podcast, and the whole Facebook group is a thing of its own, which is like this whole beast that they didn't foresee coming out of this show, but they have the best people on this group. And someone posted a photo or a link to an SBS post, which was the announcement of the last season of The Handmaid's Tale, and all of the comments were like, haha, we've already been watching it. It's the US politics. And there was like dozens of those comments of just like, I don't even need to see it. Like, we're already watching it now. So yeah, like I was watching The Handmaid's Tale, and I stopped after 2 seasons because I was just getting too upset by it.
Too much.
And it's like, I need to watch it again because like it's probably not as bad as what's really happening in real life now.
Yeah, it's kind of terrifying, and I think Margaret Atwood deserves like a Nobel Prize, quite frankly, for being a prophet in the 90s, writing that book, and for seeing what was going to happen.
Yep. So anyway, that was a whole rabbit hole that I went down. I'm going to finish my obsession with something light and comedic as well. I just burned through a hilarious TV series called Optics. It's an Australian written and produced series on ABC iView. I don't know how you can watch it internationally, but it was very good, very well written, and it was based in a PR company with people from all different generations. So it was very funny to watch Gen Xers do their thing with boomers and millennials, and to do it in the space of PR and marketing. It was very funny. So highly recommend that one. Had me giggling.
Spin Doctors.
Yep. It was exactly that. And it also like cringe. It was like the curtain had been raised a little bit on how the world really works. So very much again like SNL, and just going, we're poking fun at this thing, but this thing is actually really scary.
Yeah, love that. Awesome.
Well, thanks, guys. Good job. That's a wrap. We'll see you next week, hopefully, for the draft.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.